Association Academy of Sleep Medicine. He is currently heading the Respiratory and Sleep Medicine Division of Artemis Hospital and is also a Director of Respiratory and Sleep Cure Solutions, Gurgaon. So welcome, sir,
Thank
to
you
1MG
for having me.
Patient Education Platform. So today's topic of discussion, what we have is sleep and the associated disorders with a focus on sleep apnea. So to start with, let us understand what is a normal sleep pattern and the common sleep problems you encounter in your clinic.
So, as you would look at sleep medicine as a new specialty, it's nothing new. It is just that we've started talking about it. For ages we've slept, and we've sort of it is sort of escaped the radar of sleep, Western medicine, because we've thought of it as a very passive process. But now we understand it's like charging your mobile in the night. If you don't charge your mobile in the night or in the morning, you can't probably use it. It's just very much. So this whole concept of thinking of sleep in a more sort of positive way and active way. So that change has happened, and that is given the advent of sleep medicine in this country, in this area. So sleep is, contrary to what we believe, it is not one phenomenon. It is not a unitary phenomenon. Either you're asleep or you're awake. No, sleep is now further divided into stages, and each stage has its own role. So typically, when we talk about sleep, it is either a REM sleep or the non-dreaming sleep, non-REM sleep. So in the non-REM sleep, it is stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So ultimate slow wave sleep. So we go from very fast waves in the brain to slow and tall. So as we go into the stage 3 or the N3 sleep, the brain activity is relaxed, and that's the real relaxing sleep. So sometimes you would have slept for a few hours, and of course many hours, and but still not felt fresh. And that's probably because you've not had your stage 3 or the slow wave sleep or the rapid eye movement sleep. So we now understand very well the whole sleep architecture. So we look at sleep as a particular architecture. So a number of things can alter these architectures. So talking about the sleep disorders, the International Classification of Sleep Diseases have around 88 sleep disorders now, grouped into different subdivisions. The most common sleeping disorder being insomnia, difficulty in sleeping. Almost 30% of the population at some point or the other will have insomnia. So insomnia all of us have. If you have an exam in the morning, in an interview, if you go somewhere, we'll all probably have a sleepless night. It's only when it becomes chronic. The second most common disease, and where you have pauses in breathing happening in the night. So that and some other sleep-related breathing disorder.
Okay. So is it the sleep apnea, is it common in Indian population?
Good question. It probably is. I can't support it with data. There is very little, like many other diseases. We have only some urban studies, one out of AIIMS, Dr. S.K. Sharma in Delhi, in one from Mumbai, Breach Candy Hospital. So all those scanty little studies have shown that sleep apnea, if not more common, is at least as common as it is in the West, which is around to the tune of 5 to 10% population. So if you look at the numbers, and it's probably it matches the numbers of some of the other chronic diseases, hypertension, diabetes. So it's a huge number. So first we thought of it as a Western disease of the Westerners, but we now understand that some of the epidemics that we have, like the cardiovascular epidemic, the diabetic epidemic, it's all one of the things that is fueling this sleep apnea, undetected sleep apnea.
What are the early symptoms of sleep apnea?
Yeah.
How do I know that I am maybe, so I feel fatigue in the morning. So is it that is all the causes of fatigue or snoring is because of sleep apnea, or
okay. So number one sign, of course, is snoring. Not all snorers will have sleep apnea, but most sleep apneics will have snoring. I'm talking about obstructive sleep apnea. There's also sleep apnea which is central, where you just don't breathe, and either because of heart failure or other reasons you will not have snoring in that case. So snoring is loud snoring or a crescendo, decrescendo snoring, where you just snore loudly, then stop a breath, take a gasp, and so that's again those things you see in movies, and morning fatigue, morning headaches, waking up in the night with headache. It's important, but then you have to understand this. If you are sleep deprived, and I see a lot of these patients who come to me with sleepiness, and what I find is they've not devoted enough time to sleeping. They live in, they come home late, then they do this and they do that. They're only getting 4 or 5 hours for sleeping. They're obviously going to be sleep deprived and then have fatigue in the day. So that's not sleep apnea. So one has to look at in the whole context. If you have episode, somebody observes, your wife or your bed partner observes that you stop, breathe for there's a stop, pause of breath for a few seconds. That's called witness apnea. There's almost a sure sign that you have sleep apnea. Snoring, witness apnea, episodes of choking in the night. These are all, or excessive salivation. You're lot of saliva in the night. Maybe sometimes you can also have excessive urination. Sometimes you're just waking up and you think there's a urinary problem. It's actually the sleep apnea which is causing that. So those are the night things. In the morning you will have headaches, you will have poor memory, concentration, fatigue, loss of energy, all those things in the morning. And you will have excessive daytime sleepiness. And how do we measure the excessive daytime sleepiness? We have a score. We look at the Epworth sleepiness score. But one of the you have to look at, that's again a very Western score. We look at circumstances that if you're sleeping in situations that you don't intend to be sleeping, you are excessive daytime sleep. So it's incredibly easy disease to suspect.
Mm-hmm.
So if you snore, do not feel fresh in the morning, and if you are having some episodes of choking or apnea, so you almost likely that you have sleep apnea.
Okay. So, is there a particular age group which is more common?
Yes, it is a disease per se of the middle-aged men, in the ratio of 3:1. It's not an exclusive disease, but yes, men outnumber females by 3:1. Middle age is the time that you get it, and that's also the most productive time that you have. So people lose their jobs, their marriages go berserk because of sleep apnea. So very important disease from that angle as well.
So apart from the age and the gender, are there any risk factors for sleep apnea?
So the risk factors is obesity. The greatest risk factor is obesity. That if you're fat, you're more likely to have sleep apnea. But you can also have sleep apnea without being fat. Like a lot of Japanese, Chinese, they have sleep apnea and they're not fat. It's also to do with your facial structure, genetics, environment. So number of things like any other chronic disease. The International Diabetes Federation has stated that almost 60% of type 2 diabetics have some degree of sleep problem, and they should be. We know, like a diabetic would get an eye check, will get a foot check. They look at, because we know they are at high risk. But
so, what are the complications of if we don't get it treated?
Yeah. So untreated sleep apnea is a catastrophe. It's very much like any other chronic disease, hypertension. Once you don't treat it, nothing is going to happen the next day, but it is going to come back to you. So there is enough literature to support and to tell us that it increases the risk of stroke by almost 3 times, of heart attacks, of cardiac diseases. There is a very strong risk of atrial fibrillation. If there is a rhythm problem of the heart, it can happen. It can increase the risk of hypertension. New onset diabetes can worsen your diabetes control. There are some other, it does impact your mood, memory, concentration. Then it can lead to accidents and therefore a secondary problem. So it's a big catastrophe. It can impact your immunity. There are emerging evidences of the linkages with some sort of malignancies. A whole range of problems can happen.
Okay. So are there any special clinics for the detection and its management of sleep apnea? Or
so it's a relatively new concept. We still do not have a formal training in India and in this part of the world, and that's why we've started the CSM, the Southeast Asian, just to put forward more sort of training around it. As I've said, it's an extremely prevalent problem. It is not only a problem in itself, it is fueling the other epidemics of the cardiovascular diseases, of diabetes. So very important that we come around and treat this problem. The clinics, yes, we just don't have too many people, unfortunately, at this point, manpower who can deal with these kind of diseases. But I'm sure some of my younger colleagues will take up, see this as an opportunity, as a challenge, and they will take up this science, and the patients will be benefited. Currently, we have 4 or 5 clinics, I think, in the NCR, a few in the metro cities, but it's a disease, but where we only we reach the urban areas, but a whole lot of work needs to be done around it. And I'm thankful for 1 milligram. I hope you will walk the journey with us.
So what's the early management, the first line of treatment for sleep apnea?
So I think first is awareness. If you think, we get this patient, I get this patient, and I had the patient the other day, flown in from Chennai. He was a young man, which was in fact, who was like sleeping all over the place, was on the verge of, really bright guy, was on the verge of losing his job. because they were thinking he's nonsense here, he's sleeping all over. He was referred to a psychiatrist, to an ENT, but somehow because he wasn't fat, I don't know, he was just a very fit guy otherwise. He just somehow he came to us and we thought he's got sleep apnea. We did a sleep study, very severe retreat. So he's very, very thankful his life is turned around. So yes, it is not, I think it is one of those diseases which is incredibly easy. If you find somebody who's a little overweight, may not always be sleepy, if you ask him a couple of questions, does he have snoring, does he feel, somebody's noticed him choking. I get these patients all the time, why have you come? Because I was in a train journey. My fellow passenger told me that you should see a doctor. So this is a very regular patient who would come to me at least once or twice a week, where that has been the thing. But I think once people are more aware of it, I think it's not, you don't. But yes, once you suspect it, then you have to prove it. And that is proven only by doing a sleep study, observing the sleep in the night, and then looking at how many times do you actually have pauses in breathing, for how long, what is the oxygen like, and that's called as a polysomnography, or a sleep study that is performed either at patient's home or in a sleep lab. And we can then look at and compile the data and then come up with a solution, which is using some therapies like a CPAP machine therapy for those patients, and then they can actually have a life-altering experience.
So do you suggest that all cases of snoring should get a sleep study done?
Absolutely not. That's not possible. It's if you have symptoms of sleepiness, of other daytime fatigue, then yes, you should definitely be. So you don't have to wait till the time you should be. Now there is I must also point out some emerging evidence about the snoring itself being a problem. And when you snore, there is vibration at the carotid arteries, and there is a school of thought which thinks that is what sets off the atherosclerotic plaques and the atherosclerosis. So some real wonderful work. At this point it is not proven, but I think as of now the recommendation is very clear. If you have some of those symptoms of sleep apnea, one should get screened or tested for sleep apnea and therefore get treated.
Okay, so once we start a management of sleep apnea, after how much time frame the patient feels for himself the improvement in symptoms?
So, okay, one of the most commonly used therapies, now in terms of the therapy, the most commonly, or the gold standard, is using a CPAP machine, which is like a small tissue box sized machine which sits on the bedside and has a mask. It's very simple therapy. What we use is air with pressure, which opens the airway and makes sure the patient is not gasping for breath in the night, is able to, and it synchronizes the. It does take a little while to get used to it. Some people, would take a day. So I always tell my patients, just listen to me for the first 7-10 days. Use it, persist, and then you will see the benefits. So the other options in terms of are the dental devices. You can get a dental devices a dentist can make, and that's something you wear in the night, and then will protrude your mandible forward, or a tongue retaining device. Surgeries can also be offered to some of these patients. Obviously one has to be careful as to who is referred for the surgery and what sort of surgeries are being done. Those patients need screening for the pre-op workup, and wherever suitable, yes, that's also an option.
Okay. So this is a lifelong management?
It's a chronic disease. This is a question that every other patient would ask me. Okay, now so how long do I have to use it? I don't know, is what I always say, and the reason I say that is because I don't know the way we're going to treat sleep apnea. So right now it's a bit of a crude science. There is obstruction, you overcome it with pressure. So I think the next generation of treatment is not too far away, where we will be able to modulate the airway, just the way, like, we're sitting down now, waking in our airway, then our brain activity is making sure that the airway does not collapse. There have been some advances made in that area, pacemaker-like device which can be inserted, which will stimulate the hypoglossal nerve. So those things are also being developed. So yes, the treatment will probably require a long-term. It's a long-term solution, but the way we're treating things is evolving, and it will only get better.
Okay, sounds great, sir. I think we've covered most of the questions which our audience has asked, and thank you for all the insights.
Thank you.